Hello, everybody. I'm going to take this time again to introduce myself, just so that we can wait for other people to join in. 167 people, yay. But my name is Pooja. I am a customer success manager here at inFlow. I usually am the person who does your introduction calls, who does your training. And this webinar is a lot of what it would look like on your training call if you were new to inFlow, if you were looking to import all of your database into inFlow. That would basically be my job to help you, and also just training you to make sure that everything is set up properly in inFlow. So that's sort of what I do. It feels like I'm in a training call, but I'm going to pass it over to Katya here to introduce herself.
Awesome. Thanks, Pooch. And hi, everybody. My name's Katya. Some people know me as Kat. I'm also part of the customer success team. I'm the team lead now. You might have also seen me on some of these intro calls. I know I haven't been doing as much lately, but it's something that I do love, and I love getting to go through some of this initial data, like Pooja said. What we'll be going through today is just kind of importing the CSVs and how to get information from maybe other softwares, or if you've been tracking it in Excel. We're going to be going through all of that today. So me and Pooja kind of split it in half. So you'll see both of us doing the demo, and yeah, I'm super excited for it. And then I'll introduce Kostya. Kostya's going to be moderating today. I don't know if he's going to come on and say hi.
Hello. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Yes, this is Kostya. I'm also a part of the support team. And yes, today I'm going to moderate this chat and this webinar. So I hope you will enjoy it. Okay, back to Katya and Pooja.
Awesome. And I'll actually just pass it back to Pooja. So if you want to get us started.
Ooh, this is my first webinar, guys, so just please take it easy on me, please. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing my screen, and let me know, Katya, if you can see it, if everything's fine. Also, feel free to stop me if I'm missing something or if I'm going too fast. Also, feel free to put your questions in the chat. I might not be able to answer a lot of the very detailed questions like the Shopify one from Jeremy, but I'm going to try my best to answer as much as I can because we are a little short in time. But yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. If you have any questions or you need more support, we have our support team who you can message to, email directly, or go on live chats during business hours, which is at support@inflowinventory.com. So feel free to also reach out to us or your CSM. But yeah, getting started with inFlow through inFlow imports. Hello again with myself, Katya, and Kostya.
Quick thing I just want to mention, because I think that some people might be sending you private chats. So if you guys do have some questions, make sure you're posting them kind of publicly in the chats. So Kostya and I can also take a look and maybe let Pooja know, especially if it's questions that are related to the topics today. So just make sure that they're public just so we can see them. That's my little disclaimer.
Thank you, Katya. Yeah, feel free to put in your hopefully import-related questions. I would appreciate if they're import-related because that's the topic that we're going to be covering today. Okay, so for today's topics, we're going to be talking about product details import, stock levels import, purchase and sales orders import, vendor customer import, reorder settings import, and your bill of materials import, which is basically you manufacturing or kitting your raw materials and making a finished good out of it. We have a separate product for that, which is called inFlow Manufacturing. You can find more information on that on our website. But yeah, so that's more on bill of materials and then bundled product import operations and product images. So let's get started with the demo. And again, give me 1 second because I am doing a lot. But this is sort of my account. This is actually, this is a good place to start because a lot of the times we try to test our different settings in the account, and like we're just testing everything out just to make sure that everything works according to the workflow, etc. I actually wanted to take this time to show you how to reset your database if you were going to be doing like a full reset and then re-import everything from scratch with your like actual database. So you basically go on your name on the top right, personal settings, and then we would go to account and then scroll down to reset data. Again, reset database. I know a lot of you have questions about like deactivating versus deleting products in the past or like information. You can only deactivate products or put them in the back end. But if you wanted to completely reset your database, you can just go here and reset, click on the reset button right there, and then hit reset data and hit reset, and it's that simple. It does take a couple of minutes, so don't worry about the fact that it is taking a little bit of time, which it usually tends to happen. But I'm going to take this time to actually take you guys through our getting started guide. What our getting started guide is basically, if you are a new inFlow user, we generally share this with you guys just so that we can make the setting up process easier for you guys, just to make sure that before you import, you have all of the other things already sort of set up and input and inFlow to make sure that your transition is smooth and that you have all of the information that you need. We can obviously also share this getting started guide in the chat, but here again, if you're a new inFlow user, it starts with setting up the basics, which is basically inputting your company information and logo, making sure. So this is important because if you were to say send a sales order to a customer, it looks good if you have your company information and a logo in inFlow. So it just looks more professional. It looks better if you have all of your information and logo in inFlow already. And then this is actually another one of the very important things that we also talk about on our intro calls, which is selecting your costing method. It is very important to select your costing method before you are importing your product details or before you're doing anything else. That should be one of the first discussions you should be having with your team as to what costing method you want to use for inFlow, because it determines the way that you import information into inFlow and the way that your products and your costs are calculated in inFlow. So costing methods, you have moving average, which is like your very common averaging everything out based on the quantity and the cost, averaging everything out, and inFlow displaying an average cost for all of your an average cost for all of the purchases made for that one product. First in, first out, last in, first out. Now, it is very important to note that product details and purchase order imports are going to be different for first in, first out, last in, first out versus moving average. I am going to be touching on that a little bit later on, but that's sort of making sure that you have all of that. And then another thing is making sure you have your locations, you're inviting your team into inFlow. Again, please follow this guide before you set everything up, because it just sets you up for success. Step 2, which is adding inventory, which is what we're going to be doing today. But before I start with that, any questions?
Yeah, so we had a couple, one, and I know Costa's going quickly through them as well and trying to answer them. Someone was asking about why we don't have it just kind of as one import file. So they're kind of getting ahead, which we'll go through today as well, and why we can't combine product and stock items. Technically, it is 2 different imports, but if you really wanted to, you could have a general CSV file where you have most of your information on it. You could just have that like your master file, but when it comes to mapping, you want to make sure it's mapped correctly. And the reason we split the CSV files is mostly so that there's no confusion and that you're not accidentally mapping the wrong columns. So it's just kind of to keep it organized.
Exactly as Kat mentioned, because it's very easy to get lost in all of the details that we feel are important and that we feel that we need to put it in there. Again, the reason they are different, again, there's so many reasons, but which I'm going to touch on later on while I'm importing everything. But yes, as Kat mentioned, you could have a master file where you have all of your product information along with your stock levels and the locations that they relate to, just to, again, keep it organized if you want to. But Yeah, adding inventory. So this is where it comes into the spotlight is importing data. We need to make sure that when we are importing data into inFlow, it needs to be a CSV type file. Excel files won't really work. But I'm going to actually take this moment to show you how to import data into inFlow article. This is how you would create new products, customers, etc. So in order to create your file, you would need CSV files, which are templates, which are again readable by inFlow in the sense that if you use CSV files with the columns mentioned in inFlow, it's just easier for inFlow to capture that information faster. So let's say inFlow calls it product name, but let's say Shopify calls it item name or QuickBooks calls it item name. If you have it as product name, it's just easier for inFlow to recognize what the product name is. But if you were looking for templates, you could find all of the templates for all of the product details, stock levels, purchase orders, all of them are right here. I feel like I might be going a little too fast.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if you don't
Yeah.
mind showing some of those
Yes.
templates a little bit more, because I know that for some people that are joining us today, they might be brand new to inFlow. For those who have been using us for a while, you guys are probably quite familiar with our Learning Center. It's a great spot to get some more information, especially if you want to take your time with it. We might have to go through a lot in our webinar today, so don't stress too much. These are recorded. We will also be posting it on our YouTube channel. So if you want to come and rewatch it, you can, and you can scroll to different parts of what we go through today.
I will try to go slow, but it's just so much information that I would love to share with all of you. It's just like so much I have to tell. But okay, I will try to take it a little slow. But again, this is the article that the article that I was talking about. You can basically import your templates, which is inFlow readable. As I was mentioning, again, it's inFlow readable in the sense that it's just easier for inFlow to recognize the columns. But yeah, inFlow readable or inFlow recognizable CSV files, which when you click on any of these, it will take you to how to do that exact thing for product details, obviously, which is the products. Check out the importing data playlist, which is all fine. And I'm just scrolling to the very bottom here to see if check out this sample product file right there. It will be downloaded into your computer, which again you can use. I actually have a better way of using these templates, which is basically going back into inFlow. And as you guys can see, while I was resetting my database earlier, it did take a couple of minutes, but we're live now. My database is completely reset. I have nothing in inFlow, so I am ready to start fresh. Another way of exporting that template would be to actually go into the settings. So on the very bottom left, you see the setting gear. This is one way of going through it. But you could basically export a product, or like not a product, but like a data file, a data set file that you can export from inFlow. And you don't really have to go into the article as well. So you could also export product details, stock levels, customers, vendors, all of this good stuff from your inFlow account. Let's say you did create a product in inFlow that like you previously created a product in inFlow that you also want to export. So I'm just going to create a product called apples, because why not? An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Apples, and you can basically, when you exported, the apples created product will also be included in the export. Now, another thing to keep in mind is custom fields, because each customer's custom fields are different. If you do want to add your custom fields to, let's say, your products, your customers, anything, we generally recommend adding the custom field before an inFlow. So let's say what custom field is it? Organic, and then the text field could be yes, for example. So this is a custom field that if you want to add to all of your products, you could do that. Now, if you would export this same product detail CSV file, it should show you the apples as the product that was created. So give me 1 second while I, okay. Yeah, there you go. So product name was created. Everything again that was left blank is sort of not really visible, but you could see things like, is it organic, all of that in the custom details. So you have your category, which is the default category, and then I'm going to take you to the custom field, which is right here. Is it organic? Again, we recommend this because if you have custom fields, we would suggest making them in inFlow first and then exporting that. I'm actually going to use another file that I have to import. So basically, let's say you have your list of products already imported from your other systems, or let's say you have it from Shopify, QuickBooks, etc. You could also drag and drop those from right here. So product details, again, make sure that it is the correct file. Product details, open and hit next. I will, after I do this, I'll also take a moment to show you what the file looks like. But this is basically the product name with everything. Actually, I think this would be a good time to show it to you. So let's say this, I think this is it. Oops, no. Sorry guys, give me 1 second. Product details, there we go. Again, so CSV file, this should have, I already have a already created product details. So I'm just going to use that, but this is where you would put in the product name, the SKU. Now, again, remember, you could leave any of these blank, but the only thing that you need to put in is the name of the product. That is the most important field to have in here in this import, to make sure that everything is imported into inFlow correctly and the product is actually created in inFlow correctly. Now you see all of these different informations can be already input. If you have multiple pricing schemes, for example, let's say if you are charging different for to your distributors, to your wholesalers, to your retailers, etc. If you have different pricing that you're charging your customers, you could also mention the same in your product details CSV file. Cost, if you already have the cost for your product, you could also put that in there, because everybody has like an opening cost that they want to input into inFlow. So you could put that. Now, disclaimer. This is only applicable for moving average products. If you were to select first in, first out and last in, first out, you would have to import the cost of the products through your purchase order file. So again, that would go into a very different tangent, different explanation, but just remember that cost only applicable to your moving average costing price. And then all of the other things are the same. If you have units of measures, again, we have unit of measures webinar and article already. So if you want to have a more detailed explanation on that, you can look into that. But yeah, unit of measure and all of these things, if you want into inFlow, you can also import all of them. This last line, which is active, is basically you telling inFlow if this product is active or not. If you want to, for whatever reason, delete the product, you can hit on is active, false. So yeah, just a tip if in case you guys were looking out for that. Yeah, just a clarification, you cannot have more than 10 custom fields in a product. So custom fields should be limited to 10. I am going to go ahead and save. Actually, no, it's fine. I'm going to close this file just so that I can import that into. Actually, one more thing. If you were working on an Excel file and if you wanted to convert it into a CSV, you would basically go into File at the very top in that Excel file, and then Save As. And instead of CSV, which it would say here, instead of Excel, which it would say here, you would have to click on here on the format, and you would just have to go and click on either CSV, delimited, or CSV UTF-8. You could use either of those. That's fine, and I'm going to go ahead and close it. This is back to my import of the product. Now, remember, this is what the product is going to look like. All of these fields, and this is what I was telling you guys earlier about, like, make sure if it is a inFlow readable file, all of these will be automatically mapped into inFlow. If you had a file called, let's say, something else, let's say item name, you would have to go in here, you would have to select, you have to look for item name and like search for the item name there. Another thing to remember, cost is not automatically imported into inFlow. And one of the reasons is what I told you before, is because it's one cost is different for if you do a moving average, FIFO, LIFO, etc. But yeah, if you want to map costs, you would have to go in here, either search in cost or like whatever your column for cost was. And then you would have to just make sure everything is right. Is it organic? Now, this is the custom field that we made, and you could go ahead and, select the custom field in there. I don't have the custom field in my file, so I'm just going to ignore it, but I'm going to go ahead and hit import. What happens at this point is that inFlow is taking that file, it is taking everything, and it is trying to import it into inFlow. As you can see, I literally just refreshed it and all of the products were already in there. So it does not take a long amount of time until you have a lot of products. So it should be pretty fast. Once it is done, you will get an email in your email. inFlow registered email saying that your import is complete, or if there were any errors in the import. So this is basically what my file looks like. It imported the normal price, the cost for the product, and all of that good stuff. As you guys can see right here, I think it is still importing, so I'm gonna just give it another refresh. And while this is importing, Kat, questions? Am I going too fast? Anything?
I think we're doing good. I know Costa again and myself are trying to respond to all the questions in the chats. One of the questions that I just responded to is about whether there's a location field in the product details. And that's something that Pooja was showing. We don't have that in the product details because we're just talking about the product details. We're really just adding the information about the product, not the stock. And the stock is what Pooja is going to be going through next. But in terms of the other questions, I know we touched upon costing. Again, if you are using FIFO, LIFO, those would be through purchase orders in terms of applying the costs. But if you're using moving average or even manual, you can import those in. And when it comes to, I know some people mentioned this numerical, like the scientific numerical number, that is, I believe, because of the settings in your Excel file. So you would just need to be able to change and reformat that specific column to make sure it's reading properly.
Exactly. So I think, and it usually happens for like barcoded products. Yeah, see, I was right. Sometimes it takes it, but then if you see, the actual number is right there. So let's see if I can change it into scientific. I don't know if, sorry, it should be general,
number,
right? Yeah.
Number.
Number, sorry, my bad. So yeah. Changing it to number would help you change the barcode to the actual barcode of the product.
I also think that for some people, there might be a question when you first open up the file, if you want to convert it or not. So that will also dictate whether you have it, I think, in scientific format or in a number format.
Correct. I clicked on the do not show me again because I never wanted to look at it again. That's probably why it didn't show up for me. Okay, moving forward. Again, I'm not going to save it because I have everything already saved. I already got an email saying that my import was complete, so all of that is great. Now, usually your mind would tell you that you should do stock levels next, but there is a huge but in doing stock levels next, because when you import things like a sales order or a purchase order, that sort of tends to change your quantity on hand, which I will show to you in just 1 second. But that is because if you import a sales order or a purchase order as closed versus open, it will change the stock levels. So just keep that in mind. If you do have purchase orders or sales orders and you're importing them into inFlow, do those first. But if not, then you can just go ahead and move along with doing your stock levels. I am going to go ahead and actually do our customer import next. Let's see. So customer, right there, open next. And again, it's the same thing. It basically shows you what your customers are going to look like. And what this is going to look like. Edit data mapping is going to tell you how to edit, what information you have in there. I am going to open your customer file for 1 second, just so that you guys can see what information that you can add in there. Again, the most important thing to add in your customer file would be the name. And this applies to both your customers and your vendors. So name is again the most important thing. You can also add things like their billing address, their shipping address, and what else? If there is a discount or a default payment term that you're giving to them, you can also mention all of that in here as well, including their payment method. So if you were giving them a default payment term of, let's say, net 15, 60, etc., you could also put that in there. This discount column also says if you are giving the customer a particular discount percentage, you could also add that in here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, close it out. And I'm going to actually cancel. I'm going to try the re-import again. Import customer and customer, open, next.
And
then again,
doing that, sorry, just to kind of answer another question that was asked. I know Pooh just touched on this. Again, for most of the files, the first column is kind of the required one. I know for the sales orders and the purchase orders, that will be a little bit different. But yes, for example, the product one, the product details, the product name is the one that's going to be required. For customer, it's the customer name that's required. But we still recommend adding more information, because there are certain columns that, even though they're not required, if they're not filled in, they're just going to use the system default. So for example, like for product categories, it'll just use whatever your default kind of last category is, because there's no option for blank. So it's kind of the same for customer. There are certain fields that it will just use your default if you don't specify.
Yes. So as I'm showing the default category versus your default location, again, if you don't mention anything, that's the default that Kat is talking about. I just imported my customers, and I think that came in correctly. So if you guys remember, I put in a 15% discount for this customer, and because of the import, it did bring in the 15% discount. So anytime I am creating a sales order for this customer, it is automatically going to apply the 15% discount to that customer. Alternatively, vendors are the same process. Again, you can input anything that you want in the vendors. If they're the ones who are providing you a discount, you can also mention that everything. The next one is going to be sales orders, because I'm again touching on customers. But this is also, you could also create your sales orders or import your sales order details into inFlow. But again, sales order number is technically the most important field in here, but there are also things like inventory status. If you're bringing in, now this ties back to what I was telling earlier about stock levels. If you're bringing in the sales order as either completed or open, it would mess with the stock levels. So again, so order number, here you would have things like your customer, any information about the customer that you want. One very important thing that you guys would have to remember about this is, I'm just going to, let me select one sales order. So if you see, there are two lines for the same sales order, and you would be like, why? Is because the same sales order relates to the two different products that are sold in the same sales order. So let's say you create a sales order for apples and bananas. In the import, you would have sales order for both of them, and one line would say apples and the other line would say bananas. So if I go scroll to the right here, it should give me the product name, which is right here, completed chess set and box unicycle. It's basically the two different products that you're selling in this sales order. You're basically importing them separately, like as two different lines. And then everything is the same. What quantity are you, what quantity are you selling? Unit price that you're selling it for, the subtotal. Again, if you put in the quantity and you already have the unit price in inFlow would take the customer discount, if any, the unit price of the product, and it would create the subtotal for you. You wouldn't necessarily have to, calculate all of that. And then also the last one, which is like, is canceled. If the order was canceled, you would just put it like as true. So I'm now going to go ahead and import the sales order into inFlow. So going back to the settings, import sales order, and my sales orders should be right here. And so this is what I was talking about. open. If you're importing them as open, orders will be manually processed later, meaning that quantity or inventory will not be taken out of your inventory right away. But if you were importing them as completed, as you can see, update inventory now. So it will, let's say if your quantity, if you were selling like 5, it would take away the 5 quantity right away from your products. So that is something to take into account. Also, open and completed orders cannot be input using the same CSV file. Let's say you have 100 past orders that you want to import that are completed and you don't have anything to do with them, but you just want them in inFlow. You would input those 100 as completed. But then if there were 5 open orders that you were, you wanted to take a look at later on, you want to process later on, you would then take those 5 as a separate CSV file and import them separately into inFlow as open. I'm going to do completed because I just want to show you what happens when I import a completed order. So again, I'm going to go ahead, refresh. Again, this is pretty instantaneous, but also if you have a lot of information, it might take a couple of minutes. So just bear in mind about that. So some of these orders have been imported. I think this is all of them. But if I show you this completed chess set in the actual product page, if you see, it already took it to -3. That is because I imported that as sorry. That is why I did not import the stock levels yet, because I knew that I was going to have to correct my my stock levels later on. And also, this is what happens when you import it as completed. So let's say all of my sales orders and all of my purchase orders are imported. I'm just going to quickly import my purchase orders as well, just because why not? And then I will show you the stock levels import. Again, I know, guys, that this is a lot of information. This webinar is being recorded and you can take a look at it later on. And also we have amazing articles that point every single one of these things out. So I'm just going to import this one as open because why not? Sure. And okay. And I'm going to go back to, let's see, purchase orders.
And Pooja, is it okay if I pause right there just to kind of reiterate everything you've been saying?
Yes.
Because some people, I think, are still having a hard time visualizing the concept. The reason Pooja is uploading the purchase orders and sales orders before doing stock levels, and it's going into negative, is because she's bringing in old orders from a different system. That's kind of the situation we're in right now, is if you're trying to bring orders in from something you've previously done, we recommend doing that first and then updating your stock levels, because your stock levels file is likely your current product levels at this moment, right? If we were to do that first and then you were to import your sales orders and purchase orders, it will adjust your stock levels and therefore your final stock levels will be incorrect. So if you are bringing in old sales orders from before you ever used inFlow, or purchase orders from before you ever used inFlow, do that first and then update the stock levels based on your current levels of what you have. That will ensure that you don't have any negatives. But in the process of doing those 2 steps, if you look at your details after step 1, you'll see that there are negatives. With the stock levels import that Pooja's going to do, that's going to fix that.
Exactly. So yes, you explained that correctly, Kat. But yeah, because we are importing them as completed, it's taking everything. And you can also take a look at the movement history if you were like, why am I seeing -3? And so you could, if you go into movement history or order history, it is basically going to show you why or what affected that 0 to go into -3. So this is sort of like an audit that you could do to see what affected your quantities on hand. So yes, I am now going to go ahead and complete my stock level import. I'm just going to go and like X out of everything so that we have everything correct. Okay, I'm just going to do a refresh. Now, stock level import. Let me quickly open the stock level import file just to show you what it is going to look like. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, and as has been mentioned, the most important column is the product name column. The second most, for at least for stock levels, is location, because we have to tell inFlow at what location that quantity sits. And the last one is quantity, because obviously we're doing a stock level import. I'll re-say what I just said. Product name, which is again what product you are updating the quantity for, where you're updating the quantity for, and what quantity you're updating. You could also add sublocation in here if you have a sublocation, but feel free to ignore that one. And for serialized products, you could also put in the serial number of that product. So now your question again would be, why is this product mentioned 4 times? It's because if the same product is available in different aisles or sections of your warehouse, let's say you have a Toronto warehouse and you have a London warehouse, because both those locations could have that quantity of the product, that is why we would have to mention all of that. So one location would be like, okay, in the Toronto warehouse, we have 450, and in the Northern warehouse, we have 53 of this quantity. And that is why for each separate product or each separate location that we're entering for that product, we would have to update the quantity for that product. So yeah, this is sort of what you need to do. Again, multiple, this is again for serialized products, for example, this is a serialized product, right? So for serialized product, you would essentially put them in the same location if you had to, but then also if you mention the serial numbers, and because each serial number should only have one product relating to it, that is why it shows the quantity 1. Again, each serial, if I have an iPhone, if I have 5 different iPhones, each iPhone would have a different serial number, and each quantity for that corresponding serial number would only be 1. So 1 iPhone of that serial number. And that is sort of what you have to put in here. And I'm going to go ahead and save this file. I'm going to X out of it just so that we can import our stock levels. So go ahead and do an import. And this time I'm going to be doing stock levels. Drag and drop, the same thing again, and stock levels. Open, next. Okay, another thing, import stock levels for set inventory levels to what is being imported. Now, let's say you are doing an import where you just add, so let's say you originally had 10 items, but you're just, for whatever reason, uploading a purchase order, but not through a purchase order, but just adding inventory. If you wanted to add 5 more to the 10, you could select add it to the existing inventory levels. And the same for subtracted. If you wanted to do a bulk subtraction for all of your products for a particular quantity, you could do that in here as well. But for now, I'm just going to hit select set inventory to what is being imported. Again, edit data mapping to just make sure that everything looks fine. And I'm going to go ahead and import. Now, if you guys remember, the chess set was the one from my memory that was coming in as -3. But after the stock level import, you see the correct quantity, which is as of right now, the correct quantity is what is being imported. So this is correctly being imported is 17 in the main warehouse and 10, sorry, 7 in the main warehouse and 10 in the other warehouse. So this is why we recommend doing the stock levels last, is because whatever happened back when we were doing sales orders and purchase orders sort of gets negated, and then you're just telling inFlow that, okay, this is the new quantity and this is what we have. Again, movement history will sort of tell you what to look at. So -3 and then 10 was added to the main warehouse, so that's why it's 7 now. If you hover over it, it will give you the change, and then in the other warehouse, which is the production shop, you have 10 remaining. So this is how you sort of do stock levels. Kat, I know again I'm trying to go a little fast because we still have to cover your stuff as well. But any questions do you want me to look into, or should I go into reorder settings?
I think a lot of the questions were again, Kostya and I are trying to answer. So Renato had asked, how do I change location so it doesn't apply to all imports, need multiple locations? Again, kind of what Pooja was mentioning, based on like, let's say it's your stock levels file, there is a column for the location there. So a lot of the files where a location needs to be specified, you can change it and apply it to different ones. Like Puja has main warehouse, northern warehouse, roastery, production shop. So you can have multiple locations there. Aria had asked, is there a way to have different prices for different customers? Is there any way to restrict certain products to certain customers? So when it comes to pricing, Puja had, I think, showed the column in the customer import. You have the ability to change the pricing scheme in there. But the easier way to do it is to set up the pricing schemes first in inFlow, and then use your import file to dictate which pricing that
price scheme applies to them. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't, I'm really sorry to cut you off, but you can't have, okay, let's say you are charging each of your different customer a different pricing scheme that would make, that would need you to make like 15 different pricing schemes. If you don't want to do that, if you want to have one pricing scheme, you could also work backwards in the sense that you could have a main pricing scheme, but you could also give the customer that a discount on that base pricing scheme. Let's say instead of 100, you want to charge them 90. You could give them like a continuous discount of 10% through all of their products. So there's also one way of doing it. This is only when you have different pricing scheme for a bulk of your customers.
And then to restrict certain products, so it's not exactly done through your main database because this is your own internal database. We can recommend setting up categories, maybe if you're looking to only sell certain categories, or maybe custom fields, but there's no actual restrictions from your internal database. If you use Showroom, you do have the ability to set up personalized showrooms for different customers. And we do have a webinar on that, I believe on our YouTube channel and a Learning Center article. But within inFlow internally, you wouldn't really restrict from customers because you as the person running your inFlow get to decide which products can be added to a sales order.
Exactly. inFlow is not very restrictive in the sense that because you're the business owner, it's going to let you do whatever you want to do. So we are not going to restrict it for you, but it is sort of for you as the business owner to decide if this order or like if this product could be assigned to the customer or not. But yeah, so there's no like restrictions in again. This might be taken in the wrong way, but at least for this side of inFlow, which is like restricting products per customer, we don't really restrict that in inFlow.
One other thing that Katie had asked is for first in, first out, FIFO. Can we start with assigning a cost for initial import of that product and use purchase orders going forward as products are ordered with POs through inFlow? Technically, yes. You can set that up with your current stock level when you do import that in, and then it will use that for the first set of inventory that you've imported, and then purchase orders going forward. But the reason we recommend starting with purchase orders and bringing that quantity in through purchase orders in general is because, number one, you have a historical date for that. And if you need to make any edits, then you can actually make those changes. Whereas once you import, that's almost solidified that cost.
So this cost column for like a FIFO or a LIFO would be locked. You would not be able to go in here and change the, let's say I'm going to the chessboard, I want to change the cost. You will, if it's a FIFO or a LIFO, you will not be able to go in and change this cost. So it's sort of locked. And that's why we suggest using it through an import through a purchase order first. Also, if you have a bunch of products that you want to update your cost for, you could create like a fake purchase order with the opening balance for the cost of each product. And when you import it into inFlow, then at that point, it would also update the cost as well. So,
and kind of the most recent question, can POs be backdated at import? Technically, the order date, yes. The fulfillment date, if you're fulfilling through import, is going to be as of the date of the import. Yes. So the fulfillment, no, but you can backdate the order date.
Purchase order, yeah. So let me quickly show you what Kat means by that. If you go into a purchase order, there is the order, the date that the order was made. You could add that, and obviously I can't find it right now. I'm just gonna have to scroll. But there you go. So order date, the date that the order was made, yes, you can change it in here, but the day that it was fulfilled would be the date that the products, the quantity is taken out from inFlow, which is again, it is for that particular import date.
Yeah. Or in this case, because it's a purchase order, it would be the date received.
Sorry,
So,
yes, exactly.
yes. I know I said the same thing.
Always in my brain is like I'm always speaking about sales orders for some reason. I'm going to quickly take us through reorder settings because I know Kat also has her bill of materials things to go through, but reorder settings. Just wanted to show you guys what that looks like. Again, product name, the most important thing. Now I'm just going to take one product into consideration. Let's say I'm taking the king chessboard piece. Again, reorder settings is basically you telling inFlow that if at any point I reach this number, please ask me to buy more. inFlow is never going to buy it for you in the sense that it's not going to create a PO for you without telling you first or without you triggering it first. But it's basically inFlow sending you an email notification saying that, hey, listen, you're running out of stock for this one, so please go ahead and buy more. So that's basically, let's say this is a king chess piece that that we want to reorder more for. You can select what location you're ordering it for. Let's say you have a Toronto warehouse, and in my previous example, a London warehouse. If you want your Toronto warehouse, if you want the reorder setting to be set to your Toronto warehouse, that would be under the location right here. Enable reordering true because we want to enable reordering. Now let's say in this situation we want to enable reordering for the production shop, so enable reordering, yes. Reorder point, which is this column E column right here, is basically inFlow asking you at what point would you want inFlow to tell you to reorder more. Let's say you're like, whenever you reach quantity 99, you want inFlow to tell you to order more. So that's basically that reorder point. Like, okay, at 100, tell me to buy more. And how much do you want to buy more? So 5. So basically at 100, tell me to buy 5 more. And what is the method of that reorder? We want to be through a purchase order because we're purchasing it through a vendor. And then obviously the name of the vendor. This from location is for basically if you want to, instead of doing a purchase order, if you want to reorder. And when I say reorder, take it with a grain of salt because I don't mean actually reordering. But if you basically want to take material from your main warehouse to put it into your sub warehouse, you can say like, okay, whenever we reach below 100 in the London warehouse, take 5 more from the Toronto main warehouse. So that is basically like from which location you want to buy, like, or get more from. But yes, that's sort of what the reorder settings are. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to import it back into inFlow. Reorder settings. I'm just going to make sure I'm doing the right one. Reorder settings, open, and next. Again, making sure all of the data mapping is correct and hit import. Your import is in progress and we will be notified when that's done. I'll quickly show you what the import that we did looks like. So again, for the king chess board, okay, if you see it's already been imported. Reorder settings. And when I click on it, so if you remember the true for the production shop, that is basically turning this on. And then if you have a default sub location that you want to look into, I can mention that. Method, how do you want to do it with a purchase order? From would you believe, and the reorder point and the reorder quantities. So that is sort of how you can import your reorder settings, and inFlow will basically tell you whenever you're running out of anything. So use that feature actually, guys. That's a very fun feature to have. But that's sort of what I was going to go through today. Kat, any questions that you want me to take a look at before I pass it on to you?
I know that there's quite a few, and we might have to just kind of move on just so I can cover the last little section. I'm going to try to do it quickly. Again, just kind of as a reminder to everybody, if you do have ongoing questions after today's webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via live chats or just by emailing support@inflowinventory.com. Or again, if you're especially in the newer stages of using inFlow, feel free to reach out to your CSM. When everybody signs up, everyone will get an intro email kind of letting them know who their CSM is, and you guys can respond to that. So yeah, that's just another way to kind of reach out. And I think you might have started a poll.
I did start a poll because you just asked that question. How many of you have imported data into inFlow before? Go ahead and put in your answers. I had saved this poll before. I just slipped my mind to send it to you guys. But I actually want to bring out a point that James actually mentioned that says 99 is the answer for reorder point. We have the school math trick, the school math trick that we do. Your reorder point should always be n plus 1. So if you want inFlow to tell you to buy more at 99, that reorder point would be n plus 1, which is 99 plus 1, which is 100. So that's why the answer is actually 100, James. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking. I need to drink some water. I'm going to pass it on to you, Kat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pooja. And again, love all the detail. There's quite a bit to go through when it comes to importing, and I think we will be doing a part 2 just to make sure that we share all the details. Even what I'm going to be going through right now, I'm going to go through like a general overview of it. And this is specifically going to be for those that use inFlow manufacturing or have manufacturing in general. We're going to go through how to add those bill of materials, how to change those manufacturer settings, add in operations. And the last little bit is actually can be applied to everybody is importing images into inFlow. Again, I think we will have to have a separate webinar just going through that in a little bit more detail, but I'll get started on that. I have moved my chats to the right here. So if you see me looking aside, that's just me taking a look at everybody's comments. And again, Pooja, if you see anything that I'm missing, please let me know. But let me get started by sharing my screen here. I want to make sure I'm doing the correct one. Okay. Perfect. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Might be a little bit slow, so I do apologize. But I'm going to start from our homepage, kind of where Pooja has spent most of the time and going through the gear setting here and importing and exporting. But like I mentioned, I'm going to be focusing on bill of materials and manufacturer settings. So before I actually do any kind of importing, I do want to show what it would look like on the product side. So if I go into my products, I'm going to specifically focus on that same chest set. So we have that imported because Pooja did a product details import. But what we don't have is the actual chess set linked to all the pieces that it needs to be built out. So all those components are not actually linked to this completed chess set right now. And we can see that by clicking on this manufacturing tab. And so essentially all the imports we're going to do from here on out are going to be to make sure that this part gets updated as well. So as you'll see, there's an option to add a bill of materials, and there's also manufacturer settings. Now I'm going to quickly describe this a little bit more before we do the import. When it comes to the manufacturer settings, there's 2 different settings you get to pick from. And so the manufacturing procedure is asking whether you want to assemble manually, which means you would go into the manufacturer orders and create that before you actually sell it. Or the second option is to auto-assemble after sale. And what would occur is you can create a sales order, even if you haven't created a manufacturer order previously. And when you fulfill that sales order, it will create a manufacturer order for you on the back end. This is especially good if you actually have your bundles or kits or whatever you're building already built out, or it's a quick put together kind of situation. So especially for a kit, you just need to grab a couple things and put it into a box. That's really good to use if it's a quick setup. But if you are assembling beforehand and it's a larger assembly, we do recommend still using assemble manually. Then when it comes to the quantities, this is referring to the quantities listed on your product page and what might be pushed out to any integrations that you have. you get to choose between separating your buildable and available quantity or combining them. So what this will do is if you combine the quantities, inFlow will look at what you built and what you could possibly build. So this is good, again, if you're not creating manufacturer orders ahead of time and you're going to do it at the point of sale, you want to actually know what's possible to build so that it doesn't look like you don't have enough inventory. So if you choose the second option for auto assemble, you'll actually want to likely combine quantities as well. So all of this can be updated via an import. So let me get started. We're going to export a bill of materials to get started. Now the bill of materials file is where you will be combining your raw materials into that finished product. You're going to be letting inFlow know what components do I need to build out that finished product. So let me come in here and just get this Excel file open for us. So this is what it will look like when it's blank. We have 4 columns. We have a finished product, component product, quantity, and quantity unit of measure. These 3 are really the most important columns. Quantity unit of measure will also be important if you're using different units of measure in inFlow. But for those of you who are not using different units of measure, you can just leave this blank and just fill in the first 3 columns. So in my case, I am not using units of measure. And so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do that completed chess set. So I know what my finished product name is here. So I'm going to put it in here and I'm going to filter down. I think I might need 8 pieces. So there's, I think, 8 components that go into this. And so obviously as part of a chess set, we need a king, a queen, rook, knight, bishop, and our pawns. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a list here to my side. Give me one second. Let me just find my list of products. Now, most of the time you'll have this already somewhere saved of what components you'll need. So I have this copied. And of course, one thing I forgot to mention, I need a chessboard and the actual box it's going in. So I have those listed here as well. Now for the quantity, again, it's going to depend on how many components you need. So for the chessboard, I just need 1 box, 1. I need, I believe it's 8 pawns, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, 1 queen, and 1 king. And again, for the unit of measure, I actually am going to leave it blank because we don't have any in inFlow here. Once we fill this out, we can go ahead and save it and import it into inFlow. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you are doing multiple finished products in this one import, so I don't know, I might have roasted coffee as another finished product, and then maybe the coffee beans and other components that go into that roasted coffee, you will want to make sure it's separated out so that all your finished products with the components are grouped together. So chess set and these components are grouped into lines together on the file, and they're not separated where you have roasted coffee kind of in the middle here. We want to make sure that they're grouped so that they're importing correctly. So let me just remove this roasted coffee and we'll continue on with the chess set, and we'll go back into inFlow. We'll click import, select bill of materials. Again, we want to make sure we're importing the correct file. Open, next. Edit data mapping if you want to verify, but again, because I exported a template, most of the time it will know which columns we need, and then we'll go ahead and import. And once that's done, usually, again, it's a smaller file, so it shouldn't take too long. I'm going to go into my products and just take a look at that chess set. So completed chess set, manufacturing, there we go. So now we notice that we have all the components listed. So our next step, if we're going to do this via an import, is to set up our manufacturer settings. Now, the manufacturer settings are actually on the product details file. So Pooja had, I believe, slowly gone through it in the import, or actually quickly gone through it in the import. But in that product details file, there are 2 columns, one for whether you want to combine your quantities and one for whether you want to assemble it manually or automatically. So let me just open that main product details file that we have. And let's just see, they're just right here at the end. So again, we have a combined quantity buildable file or a column, and we have an auto manufacture column. So combined quantity buildable was asking whether we want to have the current available and manufactured quantity added with our buildable quantity. So if you want to add those together, you would put true in this column. If you don't want to add those together, you would put false. But most of the time, if you're selecting to auto manufacture, which again, you would select true or false, you'd probably have them matching. So if you select auto manufacture as true, then you'll likely want to have combined quantity buildable true. Now I do have a file specifically just for that same chess set. So let me share that with you guys. Now, again, I can use that product details file or I can create a separate one. So in here, let me just get that open for us. My apologies. Let me just make sure I open the right one. The one thing is when you have so many files, it can be challenging. So let me close this bill of materials one because we don't need that anymore. And this is what it will look like. Now, I don't need these two columns listed for my component pieces. Unless those component pieces also are manufactured, then we don't need it for those. We just need it for the finished product. So I have completed chess set, combined quantity true, auto manufactured true is active true. That's kind of self-explanatory. And then I can go ahead and import this file. Now, the reason I wanted to show just kind of one finished product is just so you guys can see how it's done. I know it can get a little confusing when you have multiple, but you would repeat this process if you do have multiple finished products. So we'll go into import. Now, again, this is the one that gets a little confusing. It's actually the product details file. I've just removed the columns I don't need and left it very simple, where I just have those two columns that I do want to make updates to. Now, the file itself, let me just make sure I'm doing the correct one. It's called my BOM bundle. And let me just find it here. Next. Again, I don't have any of the other columns. The most important is really product name. And then I have auto manufacturer and combined quantity. Again, if any of your products you want to deactivate, you can do that with that column. But if we're not deactivating, everything is active, we can just import as is. Again, that can sometimes take a minute or two. I don't think we've made a lot of changes, so it should be almost instantaneous. Let's go complete a chess set. Let's double check to make sure it's imported. And this would be through the manufacturer settings. Fantastic. So it's changed already. So we had it auto assemble and combine quantities. Now, what we'll go through next is importing operations. So on the right side here, you'll notice you have the ability to state any additional steps that need to be taken when you're putting this finished product together. The default we have in inFlow right now is assembly, but you can add multiple different operations. And let me show you what that would look like in a file. So again, I have multiple files here. Let me actually, before I do that, I'm going to show you what the template would look like if it's empty. So again, if we go into the gear icon here, we click export, and we go into operations and export. This will give us a file that we can work off of. And let's open that here. So it will already give me my finished product in here. It will list the default operation type, which is assembly, but I actually want to change it a little bit where I'm going to have two different operations. So if I'm going to have additional operations, what I'll do is I'll copy over my product name. Operation type, I'm going to have assembly be the second step, but for my first step, I'm going to put picking. So two different operation types. You'll have the option to choose whether you want to have a per unit cost or per hour cost. So in my case, I'm going to be paying for the labor per hour. So I'm going to put it's $10 an hour for the labor. That does not mean that it will charge the $10 or add the $10 cost onto the product. It will then need a secondary piece of information, which is estimated duration seconds. Again, key thing here, seconds, not in minutes, not in hours. This is to make sure that it's extra detailed. And inFlow allows up to 4 decimal points, so you can get like very, very specific with this. So in my case, I'm going to assume it's going to take me about 2 minutes for picking, 2 minutes for assembly. So that's 120 seconds in here. And then if you want to add any other operational instructions, you can go ahead and you can say for picking, staff member will pick each item from the warehouse. And then assembly might be staff member assembles into the chest box. Again, this one's kind of self-explanatory. I might not need instructions, but for more complicated manufacturing, you might want to add additional details. Maybe they have to use certain machinery or tools, and you want to put the settings or information in here. You can have that, and it'll be listed on the manufacturer order. If you didn't want to have a per hour cost and you wanted to use a per unit cost, that would calculate the cost for every unit that needs to be assembled. So if you know a general cost for the labor for one unit, you can add that instead of the per hour cost. You can choose either or. One thing to also keep in mind, with almost all of our import files, you'll see how the titles are, there's no spacing between them. So this will say operation type instead of operation space type, operation per unit cost. It's all together. inFlow will actually read it faster if you have your titles all together instead of separately. It saves it a couple of milliseconds, but when you have larger files, you might need that time. So just one key thing is if you are creating titles for your columns, putting it together will actually save you some time when it's importing. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to save this file, and we're going to go back into inFlow and import the operations. Operations, I believe it's operations 1, next. I'm going to double check my data mapping. I always like to click in this, even if I know it'll automatically fill it out, just to make sure that it's linked correctly, and then I'll click import. Again, we'll then go back to that specific product and see how it looks with the operations. Do chest set, manufacturing, and you'll see here we have picking and then we have assembly, and it will calculate the operational cost based on the time I've stated. So it's about 33 cents for each assembly that we're doing. So about 67 cents in operation costs. I'm going to take a pause here. Any questions? I know I've covered quite a bit in here.
It's all great. It's all, again, because I've been replying, but Renato actually had a question about could you add SKUs to the bill of materials import? So I was basically just replying back to him saying you technically would have to create the product separately using the product details import, which would have the SKU. The BOM import is only to link the raw materials to the finished goods for already created products. So basically linking the rook, the knight, the bishop, the pawn to the actual completed chess set is what the BOM import is for. But to create the pawn, bishop, knight, rook, including the SKU, would be through the product details import.
Yeah. And when it comes to importing, there's a reason we use a product name. That's why it's in the template, is because that is the linking piece to make sure it updates the correct product. Unfortunately, with bill of materials, you wouldn't be able to just put the SKU. You can't just SKU versus the product name, unless some people do this and it can get confusing. Some people will use the product name field as a SKU field. We usually don't recommend that because we now have a proper SKU field, but some people prefer to have that as the primary data piece. So in that case, yes, but in general, it is the product name field that you will be using to link your information when you're importing. And except, so this is one condition, when it comes to product images. Now, product images can also be imported, and you can import multiple product images if you'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and export the product image template. Let me just open that up. So we have that here. Now, there aren't too many columns on this, luckily, but you'll see that you'll have product name and SKU. because you can use either or to do the import for the images. This is the one case where you wouldn't just need the product name. And the other column is really the image URL. So for the image URL, you would want to ensure that it's a public URL. One of the things that we recommend specifically in our Learning Center article is using Airtable. Airtable helps you link those URLs to the images and actually export a file that you can then import into inFlow. Now, it is quite a detailed process, so we will probably have to do a separate webinar for that. But I have some of my product names and image URLs here for the king, the queen, and the actual completed chess set. So I'm going to copy those over. If you already have those links as well, you don't have to go through that extra process of going to Airtable. You would just be able to import this file. Another thing to just keep in mind is that if you are using the import to update pictures, so let's say you already have pictures in inFlow, but you want to update what you already have, one key thing is to make sure that you're not leaving image URL as blank, because if you are, that will remove any existing pictures that you have in inFlow. So the key takeaway from that is if you are doing any updates, it's best to export your template because it will have the URLs already in there, and then make the updates you need so that nothing gets left with a blank URL, unless you are purposefully trying to remove the pictures and start kind of from scratch. Any questions there?
Actually, it's all great. Yeah, no questions for now.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and do this last step of importing the images. So we'll go product images, which is just here at the bottom. And I believe, actually, let me just again double check what the file name was. Next. So we have all that, import. Okay. And
product images is the only one where you could use Q as your identifier. I know Kat, you already mentioned it, but like,
yes.
Yeah, so that's the only one where you could use Q.
Take a second. Now, I did this previously, and I might have messed with the links. So this is where it's important that the link is correct. But it could be just that it's taking a second. Now,
the URL expired. Has it been? So the URL expiry is 2 hours. But that's probably what has happened. So basically, whenever you guys do an Airtable import through product images, the URL does expire in 2 hours. Thank you, Kostya, for pointing that out. That's probably what might have happened.
That's likely what it is. And the other thing too is just to know, when you do import anything into inFlow, you will get an email letting you know that the import was kind of successful. If there were any errors, you'll also get an email letting you know of that as well. Okay, so in this case, again, I think my links did expire, but you would be able to import it that way. It's a really good process if you have a lot of products. If you only have a few products, honestly, sometimes it is easier to just go in here and upload them yourself. So in this case, again, it's my little chess set. I can add an image and save it that way. You can add multiple images in inFlow, so you can press that little plus icon, select the next one, and upload. When it comes to the file, it will use the first image link as your main default picture, and then any additional links that you have in there will be for the second, third, fourth photo. I hope you guys had fun learning a little bit more about importing. Again, we'll likely be doing a part 2. Pooja will keep us updated on that. And again, thanks everybody for joining. I don't know
if there are any other topics that you feel like might be important to you guys, also feel free to share us your topic ideas, and we might be able to squeeze one in as well. But thank you, everybody. Sorry to cut you off, Kat, there, but thank you, everybody, for joining in.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks, Pooja, for, again, co-hosting with me, and Kostya for moderating. We hope you guys have a fantastic day, and maybe we'll get to chat with you soon.
Talk to you soon, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.